Hello, hello, and welcome to Secrets of the Pact Worlds, which is our Starfinder lore Q&A. Today we're going to be answering all of your burning questions about the Starfinder setting, its stories, its characters, and more. So, certainly it's a huge setting, and I ain't going to be able to cover all this on my own, so I'm joined by some fantastically informed guests today. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves, starting with Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Baker. I'm a freelance author who's done a lot of Starfinder work. I've written for Starfinder Society. I've written for two of the Starfinder APs, both Attack of the Swarm and the upcoming Horizons of the Vast. And I've written for many of the hardcovers, so I have definitely touched a lot of parts of the galaxy.
All right, sounds like Kate has this panel well in hand. Jake, tell us about yourself.
You don't go home now. Yeah.
I know, exactly.
I'm Jason Tondro, but because there's three Jasons in this company, you can call me Jake. I'm a Starfinder developer. I work on Adventure Paths with Jason Keeley. And I've written three Starfinder Adventure Path volumes, about three OP scenarios. I contributed to a bunch of our hardbacks, like Galactic Magic and Tech Revolution and other stuff. Galaxy Exploration Manual, and all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, do my best.
And I'm John Compton. I'm Starfinder senior developer. I have joined the team about 18 months ago after doing a lot of organized play, so I have a bunch of Starfinder Society experience, and I work on our hardcover book lines now. I've done a little bit of adventure writing as well for Starfinder. So throughout the course of this panel, we're going to be taking questions from not only the Twitch stream chat, where you can be posting your questions and I'll be spotting them and pulling them into my big list, as well as a whole bunch of questions that we have taken from throughout PaizoCon. People have been posting their burning lore questions, so we're going to be going through some of those as well. So please do keep on posting, and I'll keep an eye out. Let's go ahead and start off with a little bit of some early Starfinder canon, in fact, because organized play really helped to set a lot of the early story for Stories Out in the Vast. With Season 1, Matt Daly asks, in the first year of Starfinder Society, was the painting of Cadrical as a tyrant and oppressive deity intentional? Is the Jinsel's dedication to an abusive overlord intended to be a cultural flaw? Just as a quick bit of context, Cadrical is a deity that is tied to an area called the Scoured Stars, and is tied into this group called the Jinsels, which are angry crab people. Let's go with that. So let's go ahead and jump in from there.
And Scoured Stars is being played right now, right? Isn't there like a live play of Scoured Stars right now?
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Scoured Stars is just wrapping up. It was a 10-episode series, I believe. So I can give a little bit of information about this from the background of helping create that storyline. Cadrical is lawful neutral, and lawful neutral has a history as an alignment of being something that is seen as anything from mechanically efficient to cruelly tyrannical, depending upon who you ask. But Cadrical certainly is kind of an overbearing deity, and so did this instill some really deep psychological scars in the Jinsels that cause them to basically reach out to anybody, any abusive overlord possible? Yeah, could be. I think that Cadrical is not a perfect figure. Cadrical is a flawed individual, and the storyline really explores a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have the different heralds of Cadrical who sort of represent those different aspects, and oh boy, the Jinsels themselves were following Juris, who has maybe an extreme point of view.
All right, let's jump into. Ooh, yeah, okay. From Aman Everstorm, what does a Casata's face look like under the mask? Namely, do they have mouths? Also, what is the reason that they wear masks and don't let outsiders see their faces?
Yeah. So I got to write the Casata chapter for Character Operations Manual, and we got to give them some mechanical feats that relate to their mask, like maybe you're really hard to sense motive on if you're a Casata with your mask on all the time, right? Or maybe you've got like a custom mask that's got some kind of voice synthesizer in it, so you can't be identified as easily. So I wanted to create some mechanical things to give that cultural object some game weight, as well as a lore weight. We have not revealed the answers to any of these questions. I mean, it's a mask for a reason, folks, right? Like, I mean, we know what's underneath it, then that sort of eliminates the whole point of the mask. I mean, John, you can correct me, but I believe we have not said why we have not said why they wear masks. We have not said what a Casata's face looks like underneath it. Many people point to one page is it Character Operations Manual?
It's Character Operations Manual.
That in early printings of that book, there's a Casata, what looks like a Casata, missing a face mask. Well, that's clearly an Astrozoan pretending to be a Casata and not rolling their culture check or their society check right? It's like not understanding what a Casatan really does. But in current printings of that book, you'll find that the mask has been replaced and that Astrozoan has been kicked out in favor of the actual Casatan who he's impersonating. But
every one of our pieces of art tells a story.
That's right. That's right. They do. We have intentionally left these things unspoken because we want Casatans are big on mystery. Like they had this sort of enigmatic, really complex, ritualistic culture, and they have a lot of taboos and things that they don't talk about and things that they don't do, and anything that we gave to explain why they wear the mask would make the mask less mysterious. And so as part of it's for a very specific reason, we don't do that. And do they have mouths? Well, they produce noise. They have a language that other people can learn. So probably, but,
One thing
they could have more than one.
They could have more than one.
It's like for the Paizo shirts, where it's like helpful to have an undershirt to keep cool. Might as well have that second mask. One thing I can point out is that Witch Weirds, which helped to steer early Casata development and culture, also cover their faces, and so there might be some part of that taboo that was adopted or perhaps even twisted in some way, where the Witch Weirds were just like, we tend not to show our faces, and the Casata is right. You got it. Never show your face. And like, whoa, that's a little bit too much.
This could be part of the great four-armed conspiracy theory, right? That
absolutely.
That the Witch Weirds, the Showbads, and the Casatans, and various other four-armed species are all in on it. And the Showbads, because they don't wear masks, are clearly the apostate. Like, we kick them out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's grab... All right, from JJL, are all high despots of the Vescarium basically badass in combat or high-level NPCs? Because we really don't do a lot of posting NPC levels like Pathfinder First Edition books tended to do. So there is some left to the imagination. And that's partly to keep them flexible. So if you want to have a 9th level campaign where you do punch a high despot, fine, go for it. If you want to play at 20th level, sure.
That's exactly right. I was an editor, and I remember when one of the first things I noticed as I was editing the Starfinder adventure, I think it was one of the Against the Aeon Thrones, is, hey, how come we never list level in the micro stat blocks like we do on Pathfinder? Why isn't this guy a Vesk Soldier 7, right? And I actually tried to lobby to get it changed. And the Starfinder team quickly shot me down. Like, no. We want it this way. We do this way on purpose so that the GM can set the level at whatever they need it to be for the campaign. And I have really come to see the wisdom of that. I think that without a doubt, you don't get to be a high despot if you can't hold your own in single combat, right? Like, I don't know if they're all super badass 12th level, monsters, but there's a certain floor. They definitely could not be, you can't be under a certain amount of combat ability. But that doesn't necessarily mean a particular level. I think a character like that you could earn that respect based on your relative ability, I think. I don't know. That's just my guess.
I feel like there's got to be a level of political machination you need too. So, you know,
Sure.
yeah, that floor for you got to be at least decent and you got to know how to hold your doshko, right? But like beyond that, you know, some of them are probably really good at scheming more so than being the most powerful warrior out there.
Also, I think there's a chance that their combat abilities would decrease with age, right? Like you could be a badass and that's how you got to be a high despot, but now you've been running the house for 10 years and how often do you get a chance to brush up on your combat skills, right? Like, so there might be a way there. And that's something that a game mechanic doesn't really represent well if you have to give everybody a level. Like we say, okay, you got to be 12th level, but now your skills have deteriorated. So now you're what, like 7th? Like that's something that PCs never do. So by not giving it a level number, we can give you the combat ability that your GM wants you to have.
The idea of decaying combat abilities combined with Veskarium, combined with the sense that Veskarium has its own like artistic culture,
Right.
really just makes me imagine that there's like the equivalent of Death of a Salesman, but for High Despot in the Veskarium, where it's like, I've been ruling for 25 years, and I used to be a fighter, a real fighter. What do we even do anymore? And you have these two children being like, we shouldn't be here writing papers. We should be out there doing classic, like, Veskarium manly things, like swinging an axe at people.
That would be a great story. Like when you look at the Veskarium and you realize they have been at war for their entire history except for like 2 periods, and we're in one of them. Like, how long can it last? Like,
yeah,
and there's got to be that story, that Death of a Salesman story, is probably told at every dining table in the Veskarium. Yeah.
Up here we have the Grand Veskarium map for a sec, where we are seeing all of the very cleverly named, practically named Veskarium planets. And this kind of speaks to the point of like the Vesk are very practical. So are all of the people high level? Are all of them great combatants? The answer is kind of leans toward they're good at something. Fantastic.
All I have to say is there's really one of these planets is not like the others, right? Like one of the Vesk 5 is clearly the one.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I see another one from GMJL that feels really, really fun and provocative because it is: do planar creatures on other planes still use archaic equipment, or especially when they're dealing with less technologically advanced societies? So we have like angels and pathfinders, and they're all like sword, spear, axe, and now we have angels, and they're like plasma rifle. So is this sort of a universal expression across the galaxy? Is this only around technologically advanced societies?
Kate, what do you think?
I don't know. It's a really fun question. I do sort of love the idea of the angels with machine guns showing up on a less technologically advanced planet. People there just have no idea what's happening. But
that does bring a new meaning to the aura of menace for an Archon. Yes.
Actually, that being said, in Alien Archive 2, I wrote some Azatas who definitely the Trinitaires who definitely go around to all kinds of planets, and there's legends of them on all those planets. And I was certainly picturing that they sort of look the same every time. They don't have like the big machine guns, but they've got their own high tech stuff. So yeah, I would say that they're with the times. They're keeping up with the latest technology and bring it with them where they go.
Yeah, when we create angels and demons and other outsiders for Starfinder, we often lean into the science to make new and interesting creations that aren't in Pathfinder. So you get like the hacker devil, for example. But the answer to your question is to figure out what is the objective of the outsider in question, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they're here to like kick ass and take souls, then yes, they're going to whip out the Gatling machine gun, the Vorpal Gatling machine gun. And I say that because that's what my bad dude has in Assault in the Crucible, right? He's like that freak with the Vorpal Gatling gun. But if they're here to like spread the faith or whatever, then no, right? Like they're gonna they're going to try to use tools and items that the culture is going to identify with, and they're going to want to seem nonviolent or blend in, right? So ask yourself what the objective. Those high-tech things are available to those outsiders, but whether or not they choose to use them is going to be the right tool for the right job, right?
I think that blending point is really good, because if you have that angel of justice show up, do you want people focusing on the justice or the fact that it's using some sort of weird technology?
Yeah,
It's like, what did we learn? That lasers are cool. No, it's like we treat people fairly. And that lasers are cool.
Lasers are so cool.
Nobody listens to us anymore. Just wipe out the planet. There's definitely that. But I think also another point to the question is that just because the Pact Worlds has this level of technology now doesn't mean that this is the only level of technology that's ever existed. We have like the Civs and the Kishiles that had this level of technology a million years ago. So where were the angels then? What were they doing? So it seems to just be sort of a Pact World centric or Arch Galaxy centric sort of manifestation. Okay, so less esoteric one. Where would one find kobolds in Starfinder? And did the sewer dragons make it off Galarian before it got yeeted out of existence?
I feel like they got off. The sewer dragons, they are survivors.
That's the theme of kobolds for as long as they've been in our hobby, right? Is that they are survivors. Somehow they make it. Against all odds, they make it. Yeah. Well, this is exactly something we should address, because kobolds show up in the character cards.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Our recent species deck. Yep.
Kobolds, and I think gnolls and Gripply and Kitsune. Did I get those right?
And Samsarans.
So we get these cards, and they give you racial traits, but they don't really put those species into context. I mean, not even a one-page Alien Archive entry. And that's a shame. Like, we need to figure out how those creatures fit into Starfinder society, Pact World society. And we haven't given that answer yet, but I think that and if we don't, the longer we don't, the quicker players are going to figure it out for themselves. They're going to come up with their own answers, which is not bad. But as game developers, we kind of feel like we kind of owe answers to that question. So this is a good question, and we should answer it in print.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suspect they have some presence within the Pact Worlds. One thing that we do have to do anytime that we as developers are fitting a new species into an existing area or star system is watch out for conceptual overlap. So, for example, if we're placing kobolds in the Pact Worlds, I probably would not put them on Akaton because we already have the Keshti, which are size small little lizard folk people that sure look like kobolds. So I would not want them side by side because it would create brand confusion. But if we were to throw kobolds onto Abalon for some reason, then they wouldn't fit right in, but they would stand out in a good way.
For sure. Yeah. Or put them on Castrovel or something, or Verces. Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally.
The Lashuntas will love that. Okay, yeah. So, Triaxis would be a great home for them because they'd be surrounded by dragons.
Well, then we have that blended thing. If we do it right, then the way that the kobolds treat the dragonkin becomes a way to make those two species more interesting rather than less interesting. It's a good point. I like that.
I love the idea that the kobolds show up on Triaxis and they're like, yay, dragons! And all the dragons are like, we hate you. We never liked you.
Yeah.
Look around piteously, and they're like, yay, dragonkin! And the dragonkin are like, we need bonded companions, so welcome to the family. And like, yay, finally we're validated.
Yeah.
All right. So this is more of a broad speculative question tied into this from Toradin341. What other Pathfinder species might make their way to Starfinder? Like, what else do we want? What else would be exciting for us to pick up from Pathfinder that isn't already explicitly in Starfinder and be like, here you go.
Okay, I'm going to throw the grenade, but I'm going to wait for Kate to go first because
no. Jake is cooking the grenade.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I have a great answer. One of the recent ones from I think it was an Ancestry guide that I really like are the flesh warps, and I think those would fit into Starfinder super nicely because who doesn't want a Frankenstein in their sci-fi settings? So that's a creature who I think would be a really natural fit to put into Starfinder. Who there's certainly lots of examples of that kind of creature in there, but not just like as a ancestry or race that you can play.
Well, it's interesting because like a lot of those, I mean, we covered a lot of them, right? Like all the Geniekins and all the outsiders and a lot of the ones that we don't have, like what do we call lizard folk now? They have their own name.
Erexi.
Yeah, Erexi. Yeah, them. Like as John was saying, like it kind of overlaps with all the other lizard people we've already got in the setting, right? Like there's not a whole lot of design space for lizard folk in Starfinder. The species that we have not brought over are the ones that are really unique to Pathfinder, right? And maybe we shouldn't bring them over because they're part of the Pathfinder brand, like leshies, right? Like leshies are a huge deal in Pathfinder, and Eleanor, and Louise have done incredible things with them. Well, so we shouldn't take that, right? We should let that stay part of the Pathfinder thing. But void pugs, we can still get. I want space shooties because I want to have space shooties in my Starfinder AP, and if you tell me no, I'll just put them into a backmatter article anyway.
Oh no! Well, I'm sure that will come as some solace to mediocre gamer who had been preemptively asking about so-called void pugs or space shoonies.
Yeah, I'm already responsible for the space walrus people, so I think that's my one animal alien I'm allowed to put in.
We've long had an unofficial rule about like you can only have one name, one proper name in your entire career that has an apostrophe in it, without truly understanding glottal stops. And so, like, I think you got your one animal species in there, yep. Kate.
Yep. I made it count.
That's right.
Yeah, you did.
Did I tell you one of my recurring NPCs in Flight for Doubt was going to be the walrus, but the authors said like the Shan who became the otter person, like the Berneri, she was originally she was originally a walrus person, and the authors were like, do they have to be a walrus? Can they be something else? I know. Sorry.
No, those are the people we don't bring back.
Yeah. But Rob was like, okay, you can have one walrus person. And I'm like, but she has a daughter who's an NPC, so I get two.
Look, we have very clear protocols here. You can't have two walrus people, but if you want to have your Morlama adopt an uplifted bear child, you can.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. That's where we draw the line.
Crown family wins. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's go for a slightly deeper one that involves a little bit more metaphysical. Alex Agunas asks, what factors keep a deity from spreading its faith between planets? For example, Demoratosh is pretty localized in the Vesk system, but he's referred in a couple other places. What is stopping him from spreading influence into the Pact worlds prior to the Silent War?
Yeah. John, what do you've been thinking about this a little bit? I'm curious what you think.
So with something like this, the first thing that I consider for any deity is that although they exist across all space and across the whole multiverse, when you're like a full deity like Demoratosh,
yep.
You still have your areas of influence can still reflect how you do business. So if you are like Ibra, where you are about the mysteries of the galaxy and you just want to exist in every mystery of the galaxy simultaneously, that's your business. But when it comes to somebody like Demoratosh, who seems to have even had origins with the Veskarium, I think that part's kind of unclear, but it might be that Demortosh basically was like, I will one day conquer the entire multiverse, but I want to ensure that it is in fact conquest and not just showing up somewhere and being like, hey, would anybody please adopt me here in the Pact worlds? Oh, I see you already have, according to Pathfinder Wiki, 53 deities with the war domain. I'll come back later. You know, but so I feel that there's sort of there's a almost psychological and theological control valve that affects how a deity does spread. And in the case of Demortosh, I feel that the Veskarium and any of their affiliates really have to be kind of carrying Demortosh on their back and the faith to other places. And once it spreads from there, that's fine. But Demortosh feels like Demortosh has to work for this. So I think you can apply that logic to a lot of other deities as well.
I really want to see other worlds who have encountered Demortosh but maybe under a different name, or who think of Demortosh as being one of their own species rather than a Vesk. And I think there's a lot of ways that we can get that kind of synchreticism going. Help me out, John. What's the name? What's the word I'm thinking of?
Synchronicity?
Yeah, well, no, not synchronicity, but that when multiple religions have different gods of war, and one faith kind of absorbs the other faith's god of war, right? The way that the Romans absorbed the Greek gods, for example. We have a lot of potential for that. I would love to find that. We create maybe we create a new planet in the vast where they're conquering all of their neighbors. And they worship Demortosh, but they don't call Demortosh Demortosh. They call him like a different name or her a different name, and they imagine them as being one of themselves. And then the Vesk show up, and Demortosh is like, "Hey, that's me!" And they just all words,
No. This time you don't have to fight each other. You both worship me. It's cool. Go and fight somebody else.
Yeah, maybe the Veskarium invades one system, and then these other people invade from the other side, and they find out all along at the end of it that they've all been working for the same goal all along. It'd be interesting.
That'd be fantastic. Another storyline that I could see for Demortosh, because we haven't really defined his origins. I'm tickled by the idea that Demortosh has gone through several phases of growth, and that the Veskarium and its expansion is just the most recent one. Yeah. It would be so delightful for an adventure to go to a planet in the vast and find that there is ancient Demortosh worship, but they don't know him as the conqueror. They know him as the defeated one. And there has not been Demortosh worship on this place for tens of thousands of years, but the Veskarium is bringing it back, and they've been given all these signs that they need to conquer this planet, and they're like, well, it's clearly strategically important. No, it's a grudge match, because this is where Demortosh was born, and where he ran with his tail between his legs, and he's a god now. Gosh dang it. He's going to go back there and show he's an adult. I got my whole society here to kick your butts. Brr. I like those stories.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff we could do with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. What is another one? All right. GM JJL asks, is there an obvious element in Starfinder that definitely makes it an alternate reality and not just a possible future for Pathfinder? So something that makes it, to rephrase the question, one way we can look at Starfinder is to say this is a natural continuation of the Pathfinder setting. Another way that it can be viewed is that either a combination of the gap or anything else made it so that this is in fact a completely divergent future. So it's not the Pathfinder canonical future. It is a new possibility that's split off somehow. So I think JJL is asking, are there things that in Starfinder that would indicate the second possibility over the first one?
Okay. Passing.
I mean, I'll say I'm very interested. There have been discussions that this year's organized play specials, the Pathfinder and Starfinder Society specials, are going to be linked. That something in one will affect the other. And while I had no part in either of those, I cannot wait to see how. And maybe that'll give us some hints on, if the people in the Pathfinder Society special are actually doing something that affects the Starfinder Society special. Maybe that'll
would fuel the
something.
Conspiracies online. Yes.
Well, I kind of feel like maybe we should take this opportunity just to remind everybody why we have the gap in the first place, right? Like the Starfinder, not in the setting, but as game makers, right? Okay, so here we are, we're doing Starfinder. Starfinder appears to be set in the far future of Pathfinder, in the far future of Galarian. Okay, but we are not going to tell James Jacobs what to do. Okay, right? Like we are not going to tell James Jacobs, so here's what happens on your world 1,000 years in the future. And he's like, no, like that is above your pay grade, right? It's like that. So instead we create the gap to create this big uncertainty. What happened in that time period? So we can use the Pathfinder setting, all the planets of the Pact worlds that we've been having used ever since Distant Worlds. And we can use all those species and all that stuff, and we can reference Absalom Station, for example, and all those elements of pre-Gap Galarian without ever telling the Pathfinder team how their game has to go. Okay, so if we ask, well, so are you for sure the future of Pathfinder, or are you an alternate future, a possible future? And the answer is, we can't tell you because if we tell you, then we're telling the Pathfinder team, and we can't do that. Like Pathfinder has to be able to make its game the way that they want to make their game. And if they decide that they want to blow up Galarian at some point, well, we can't tell them not to, right? Or Akaton or any other planet in the Galarian system. Like, okay, well, this adventure path means that Verces blows up. And so I guess Starfinder didn't happen now. And I'm like, okay, well, like that. So we can't have that kind of incongruity. So we have to just leave it a mystery. And what that means is that the power to make that decision goes to you and your players and your table. If you want Starfinder to be an alternate future, one of many possible futures, then do that and play that game and have the players go to all these different possible futures of Pathfinder, in which Starfinder is just one of them. But if you want it to be the one true future to which Pathfinder is going, well, now you can do that however you want to do it, and you can play that story. And those are things that you guys can do that we can't do because we're Paizo.
Excellent. I'm going to see about pulling a couple of questions from, now that we have that heavy answer of, I don't know, you decide. This is good. I'm going to pull a couple of questions from our Twitch stream. So first off, I'm going to get a quick response one that I'll handle real quick. Silver Druid asks, could Pathfinder's Galarian simply not exist and instead be a simulation inside Salvation's End? Yes. Alrighty. Next up, so... like there are some of these, like our discussion thread on the Paizo events Discord was asking, like, do we want to know the answers to the big questions of the setting? And it's like, I don't know, what is satisfying to you? Some of these are things you just have to approach yourself. Okay, one that is more meaningful to the whole panel, though. Memento Corgi asks, great name, by the way, how does magic benefit from the additional time and experimentation, sort of like classic tech R&D? If magic doesn't advance, it seems like hybrid items would eventually derive their utility almost entirely from the technological aspect. So, like, if magic stays here, but technology is continuing to get better and better, it does seem like technology is doing the heavy lifting.
Right.
Lots of different directions to take this question, really.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm going to take this in a weird direction. My day job, I work in optics. And one of the things I think that is so cool about that field is that we use principles developed hundreds of years ago, how lenses work, how light works. And I think in some ways it could be the same for magic in this setting, that maybe it doesn't have to be getting better and better and better and better, maybe you're just finding new ways to integrate it in with your technology. That it just how you're mixing things and how you're using it can give you new applications and more abilities without it needing to necessarily be more powerful on its own.
Yeah, this is something that we're going to be addressing a little bit in the Magic and Tech Revolutions books, I think, right? We've got like some sections in there on how does the average person of the Pact worlds interact with magic on a daily basis, and how much technology do they interact? What kind of technology do they interact with on a daily basis? How does the average citizen of the Pact worlds use magic, and what do they think of technology, or vice versa? But your observation that technology is kind of ahead in this partnership is, I think, accurate. The core rulebook is very clear that most things are handled by technology. People don't walk around with magic wands all the time or use magic to talk to their relatives, right? Like they carry a comm unit. That's everybody has these cheap, easily manufactured objects of technology. Magic is there, but it's seen as something that's harder to learn and less predictable, more prone to crazy side effects or weird consequences. It's not as 1 + 1 does not always equal 2 when you're dealing with magic. And that means it's harder to mass produce and it's harder to mass educate. And so you get a lot of kind of little niche people doing their own weird magic things, right? And so we preserve magic and keep it magical in the sense of, when we use that word in its most, in the sense of, not in a gaming sense, but in like an English vocabulary sense. Something is magical, meaning that it's kind of wondrous and mysterious. And when you see it, you're like, wow, that's magical. Like we want to keep that, and yet technology is still very present. So those two things come together for stuff like weapon fusions and various other specific items. But we don't want magic to be fully integrated in that kind of, we don't want magic to feel common. We want it to feel kind of weird and mysterious a little bit. And I think that's why you don't have magic as, if we made it as common as technology, it would become less magical. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And one thing that we do go into when it comes to technology or items in particular, because saying technology is a little weird in this dichotomy, is that there are little magical components in a lot of everyday devices. And to an extent, one of the things this does is help to bridge that logic gap between what our technology can do now in the real world and what our technology is apparently doing now. It's like, hot diggity damn, this laser pistol weighs like 1 pound and can fire holes through a solid steel wall. How does it do that? Well, you understand it has a magical capacitor. Oh, okay, a magical capacitor. Like there's a little bit of that's going on, as opposed to needing a 80-pound backpack for one shot.
Another thing I think for us to keep in mind as we describe this setting and as we play in this setting is that the most important culturally transformative thing in Starfinder is 100% technology driven. And of course, I'm talking about the drift, right? Like the thing that makes interstellar society possible cannot be done with magic. If you're a kid and you want to study magic, your parents are like, no, Johnny, like get a real job, right? Like everybody knows the pictures in technology.
Yeah, I want to work in games though.
Well, you got other things coming, Johnny. But yeah, so think about the internet and the way that online life has transformed our society. Imagine if the internet, imagine if we lived in a world where there was magic and technology, but magic could not use the internet, right? Like everybody would be moving. It's kind of like the liberal arts, right? Like, well, why study English when you can become a computer scientist? And that's basically like the fate of magic in Starfinder. You're like the liberal arts student in a science and technology universe.
Yeah. And as Jake mentioned at the beginning, there is more about this that's coming out in Tech Revolution. And especially this last part that we've been talking about coming out in Galactic Magic, both of these books are using a solid amount of page space to explore the state of technology, the state of magic, and the ways that different components of it are viewed and have evolved. So we're really looking forward to having that bit of world building out in the wild. But that's later this year. All right, speaking of stuff that's coming up later, let's get a quicker one. GM Kishmo asks, is Shadow Absalom still a thing? Is Shadow Galarian still a thing for that matter? Or are they both missing?
Well, we did some research on this before the panel started.
What did we find out?
Well, so there's a Shadow Absalom station. So Absalom's gone from the Shadow plane, and there's a Shadow Absalom station instead, which is a mirror image, a darkly inverted mirror image of the actual Absalom station. So there's your answer. And that's all in the article, right? Like the answers to this are right there in an article that came out in the Signal of Screams AP, all about travel in the Shadow plane. And I forget what volume is that, 8? No, it's got to be...
That would have been 12.
12, yeah.
Let's see. Matt Daly, and also later on a user by the name of SSims2. What were the last events in the Pact world's recorded history prior to the start of the Gap? Do we know the year that the Gap starts? I'm just going to address this one quick, riffing off of some of the stuff that we said earlier. So the Gap exists in part as a tool to help to separate what our Pathfinder and Starfinder developers need to necessarily do to fit their settings into the other group's settings. So the exact date of when the Gap starts is a little squidgy. The exact date of when it would have ended in comparison to the Pathfinder universe, also kind of squidgy. There's an implication that the Gap was probably in the realm of thousands of years, but
also, I think we've established that the Gap starts at different times in different parts of the galaxy. There's at least some flexibility there. So if we assign an arbitrary date, like the year 5000 or whatever, well, that might be true in one part of the galaxy, but it might be 5001 or 5002 or 4998 somewhere else.
Long story short, this is not an excuse to say, well, the Gap started in 2021, so you can just tell your GM that nothing that happens matters anymore because nobody's going to remember. Not how this works. All right. So since we've done a little bit of work with Galactic Magic, but also because we work with, divinities in various adventures, GM JJL asks, are there any demigods or lesser divinities hanging out on the material plane in Starfinder? Kind of like how Tree Razor was often stomping in Tanglebriar.
Gosh, I hope so.
Yeah.
Because that's a great idea. Like, we should totally bring in some of those guys and have them show up as like an AP baddie or a PC patron or something. That's a great idea.
Yeah. One that does jump out to me, having done a little bit of research for various deities, was that we have one of our Fey eldest who is mentioned as named Apheline, who's mentioned as being left the first world, lives in stars, and I mean, that sure is a hobby. I don't know what that does for that eldest, but so one of the considerations is not only do you have living demigods and the like living on conventional worlds, but do you have weird environments and worlds and places that you can't even necessarily bug these people that are nonetheless on the material plane that they are living in? And the answer to the latter one is almost certainly yes.
And we have a lot of room here for local demigods, right? Like the demigod of one planet, or that which we haven't really gotten into. We don't have. I think we get into some of it a little bit in Gods and Magic, don't we? I mean Galactic Magic.
A little bit. Yep. We have some wild new information coming out in that book.
We do these Codex of Worlds entries in the back of every Adventure Path volume. I would love to do one that has a local deity as part of the planet's description, and let's give them some stats or something.
Absolutely. Okay. Shatrayu asks, now that mech rules are a thing in Starfinder, what planets and societies have this technology, or have had this technology all along, and why have we not seen them before now, aside from on Daimalco?
Okay, well, if you hear that whining in the back, that's my dog that wants to go for a walk. I know she's like, yeah. The answer to the first question is everybody's got mechs and they're awesome. Like, we can't wait to share the art because there's so many factions. There's all these different factions in Starfinder. Like the Corpse Fleet and the Xeno Wardens and Abadar Corp and the Stewards. And so we got Kent, our concept artist, to come in and draw mechs for all of them, and they blew our minds. Like, if you could have been in that meeting when he's just showing us like one mind-blowing picture after another, and we're like, holy crap, this is awesome. So everybody's got mechs. Now, why have we not seen them? Well, why does Spider-Man not show up whenever the Avengers are saving the world? Because they're off of their own stories. Like we weren't telling the mech story; we were telling some other story. But we want to get the mechs to show up now. Now that we have them as part of our toolbox, we do want to bring them into the stories, and you get to see them and use them. And I don't think there was any great law. Like, there was no anti-mech prohibition ruling of the Pact worlds now getting rid of. No.
They were there the whole time, but people were using them for really mundane purposes that weren't interesting.
Yeah, exactly. They were there the whole time. Yeah. We didn't tell you that they didn't use mechs in the Silent War or to fight off these. Like, we didn't say they didn't, so maybe they did.
One of the considerations is that mech technology is not a single unified technology. So there are many sort of like all sorts of different systems and worlds could have invented their own infospheres. There are lots of different ways to have made something that is vaguely mech-like function. And mech really functions as a category of conveyance, much like vehicle, where we have exploration buggies and we have zeppelins. Right. Like, these are vastly different technologies. So you're going to find again, like some weird Xeno Warden Corpse Fleet mechs, but you're also going to find classic style mechs, like the Stewards have very, I'll call them traditional looking mechs that capture some classic notes. So there's that. I forget exactly how much of it made it into Tech Revolution for the origins of certain mech technologies, but one of the things we were playing around with early on was the idea that the Pact worlds did not invent or derive its own mech technology, but it got it from elsewhere. Much like how the Veskarium did not have drift travel until the Pact world showed up and was like, hey guys, who wants hyperspace? That the Veskarium developed mech technology and was like, we use this to stomp on people. It's great. And the Pact world was like, tell us more. And so I'm personally intrigued by the idea that, like, during the Silent War, the Veskarium had mech technology and won some early battles, and then the Pact world was like, we need this. Like, what can we do to take this technology and adapt it?
Yeah, that's a really neat idea, because the Aslanti Empire, Star Empire, kind of had their Eon Stone technology thing going on. It'd be really interesting if we could kind of take this huge technology bucket and give each of these three governments kind of their own pocket, right? Like, so the Veskarium invent mechs, and they kind of they really refine the technology, and that's how they conquered all the planets in the Veskarium. And then when the Pact Worlds encountered them, they traded drift technology for mech technology. Kind of reminds me of the old Klingons get the cloaking device from the Romulan stuff, in Star Trek.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good idea. We should do that.
And a lot of I can imagine a lot of industrial espionage here too, with stealing designs for these things,
for sure,
reverse engineering them, and once you see it, like, oh, we can do that, we can make that happen.
The Australians weren't going to give up their mechs without a fight. Are you kidding? It's the Vesk.
or they're like, wow, they made this technology work. Yeah, but they use it using this inefficient mechanism. Why? Hang on, give us a year. Like, we can make this way better. All right, let's see. Yunki asks, so do the Starfinder deities still have heralds like the Pathfinder deities did? If so, are the heralds well known in the Pact worlds, or are they secretive and mythical beings that no one really sees? So just for context, heralds are like these CR15 creatures from Pathfinder First Edition, which were like the right-hand outsider of any particular deity. So when they showed up, you're like, I guess we really are hearing from Caden Kalian level of thing.
Black Butterfly a herald, or is she a goddess of?
She's a separate deity. She's like the shadow that Desna saw and was like, that's weird. And then the weird shadow was like, I'm weird. And then flew off. Desna has an issue with her hobby of making deities.
Well, I mentioned it earlier with the Cadrical question, but we know that Cadrical has heralds over in the Scoured Stars. So that doesn't necessarily prove anything about the Pact World's deities, but
I think there's really two reasons why you haven't seen heralds yet. I mean, they've got to be there, right? Like, why would we say no? Why would we not have heralds, right? But one of the big challenges with the Starfinder setting is that it is so big. Like, there's just simply so much to detail. There's all of these planets and all of these species and all this different technology, and like, there's just so much. And so when we do an article on Hylax, for example, like we did in the Attack of the Swarm AP, well, we spend all 8 pages talking about Hylax, and we don't have room to like take another couple of pages to talk about one of Hylax's heralds. Like, we want to know about Hylax, right? And we do all this stuff for Hylax, and we still don't have enough room to do everything and that's only one deity. So we just haven't had time to get to them, I think. We haven't had an adventure that really needed one. Did heralds make it into Galactic Magic, John?
Not that I'm remembering. No, certainly no statistics for heralds showed up.
Yeah.
There might be some references to it, but I think what Kate mentioned about like Cadrical having some heralds running around is kind of the closest that we've gotten for a bunch of that. One of the possibilities that could be fun to explore for us is the idea that heralds have been around, but they aren't around terribly much anymore, and it's partly because of the state of technology in the galaxy. Because back in the Pathfinder days, you could walk up to somebody and be like, I'm a CR15 herald, and they'd be like, I have a longsword that does a D8 damage, and the herald would be like, you do you, kid. I'm still really impressive. But now a herald shows up and like, Caden Kalian has a message for you, and suddenly this tier 4 starship says, according to the rules, my tachyon cannon does times 10 damage to not starships, and suddenly you got no herald for Caden Kalian anymore. I'd love to consider the idea that we have that in the past, like 86 AG or so, there was this event called like the Herald Crisis or something like that, where a whole bunch of heralds and deities were like, we don't like what's going on down here on Abalon. We're going to have a talking with them. And like the heralds got abducted. And the deities went, oh no. Oh, that's bad. Hang up. Can they do that? Triune, what have your people done? Level of thing. It could be really interesting to show how, as technology evolves, how that can change the dynamic between mortals and the divine.
Well, also, we have to acknowledge that, like, you don't even need a herald anymore, right? Like, just call them on a comm unit. Like,
but my deity has filters set up.
Like
Keep blocking my number.
Technology has made a lot of these fantasy tropes kind of pointless, right? Like, you can just that's what the infosphere is for. And why can't Destiny use the infosphere instead of sending a herald to you? Or she's going to send you a dream. So maybe that was a bad choice anyway. But you know what I mean.
Exactly.
So yeah. On the other hand, what if the herald? Okay, heralds get spaceships too. So I just want your CR15 herald to show up in a tier 15 starship, so that when someone tries to destroy them, they're like, okay, two can play at this game. So
Shaylin says no, hit the nukes button.
Yeah, exactly. Another reason why we haven't gotten to these guys yet is because we haven't been able to do as much high level support for Starfinder as we did for Pathfinder. And Avatars, a lot of that divine stuff, was all high level play. A CR6 Avatar doesn't make, or Herald doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, fortunately, we're getting more high-level play. We've got more stuff coming out. We did Devastation Arc. We've got more stuff coming out that hasn't been announced. But so as the more we do that, the more likely that we are to be able to finally get some of those high CR. You know, where would we put a CR15 Avatar? I guess in Alien Archive. We're too busy doing weird monsters.
Exactly. Alrighty, well, we're pretty much at the top of the hour, so we're going to see about wrapping up here. Time has been flying. We still have tons of unanswered questions, but that's just more fuel for you to be talking to us directly. We are in the Paizo event Discord for the rest of the weekend. Jake and I both have Ask Me Anything threads going on. Right. You can always drop your questions on paizo.com on our message boards where we check things out. And also, if you have even more questions, especially about the game itself, in 21 hours, we will be back here to have the Ask the Experts Starfinder Q&A. So you can bring a whole bunch of your questions there. We're also collecting those questions on the Discord server as well. So lots of ways to find us. Kate, how can people find you?
Yeah. Hi. So you can follow me on Twitter at KateBakerGM. I'm also on Discord, and I'll definitely be around in the PaizoCon Discord for the rest of this weekend. So feel free to say hi if you see me in a channel there.
Fantastic. Jake, how can people find you?
At Dr. Comics is my Twitter handle. And then all of my dev diaries, my video diaries that I've been doing are on the BAMF channel on YouTube, so BAMF Network. And of course, I've got an AMA, and I've been very active this whole weekend, so hit me up there. And
I'm John Compton. You can find me at Archeotog on Twitter. I also hang out on the Starfinder RPG Discord fairly frequently, and I'm happy to engage with folks and speculate about the possibilities of Starfinder there. But that's going to be a wrap for Seekers of the Pact Worlds. Thank you so much for contributing your questions. Thank you again, Kate, Jason, for joining me on this panel today. We're going to be jumping into a Glass Cannon live play in just a few minutes. Be aware that our Twitch channel will go dark for a couple of minutes on the lead up to that, so do stick around. The world has not ended. The new gap has not started. So stick around for some great fun. And again, we will see you back here, I'm sure, in about 21 hours for Ask the Experts. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Take care, guys.